Hey, and happy Sunday to you. Welcome to Paint With Me Live. We are here another Sunday. We do this every Sunday. Sundays is the day that I set aside time to work on my dream project. So before we get started, my name is Brittany Lewis. I'm a professional artist, illustrator, graphic designer, tarot deck enthusiast. And again, Sundays is the day that we work on the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. And this Sunday is no exception. So I'm hoping that the audio is coming in good. Ever since we had that glitchy live stream, I've been a little a little nervous about the audio, but last week was good, so we're gonna put in an atmosphere that this week is gonna be good as well. So before we get into what we're gonna get into, before we paint live on the Cosmic Gateways Tarot, do me a huge favor. If you like this live stream, if you find something valuable in it, if you like watching me, if you find any of this interesting, or if you want other people to see it, be sure to leave me a thumbs up. And if you want to be notified anytime I go live or do a new video, be sure to hit the subscribe button. That helps me out a lot. Another way that you can help this channel out, to help out me as an artist, to help out, just a fellow human being, is to go by my website, blewisarts.com. If you have a project that you think I would be a great fit for, there is information there for you. If you'd like to sign up for the wait list for the Cosmic Gateways Tarot, there's information there for you as well. But more importantly, if you like the art and if you would like to purchase some of my artwork to have in your home, whether that is books, t-shirts, all of the good things, be sure to visit my shop. It looks a little something like this, where you can pick up poster prints, canvas prints, books, ebooks, the whole lineup. Everything is there on my website. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, last week we left off with the Three of Wands, and that's exactly where we're going to pick back up. When we left, I did continue to work on the Cosmic Gateways Tarot because, again, Sundays is the day that I do that, and I wanted to maximize the time that I spend on this deck so that we could go ahead and get it out and get it to you guys as soon as possible. So I did a little bit of work. Now, where we left off in the live stream, we were actually working on the skin of our character as well as her sandals and her hair. I continued in finished working on her skirt. And so we're going to pick back up on continuing to work on her costume. Once we finish that, we'll move around the canvas a little bit. Now, this is a character, again, that we've seen a couple of times in a couple of cards. This is the same character from the Strength card, which is in the preview panel right below me, or my reference panel. And I'll zoom out a little bit for you guys to see it. This is the same character. She also shows up in our page of swords, excuse me. And so I'm just retelling her story, continuing her story with the Three of Wands, because I do believe that she is on a little bit of a journey, and I want to play up that, that story in this card. So we're just going to pick right back up. Now, where I left off, again, I finished her skirt. So when I was doing this live, because I've done this character a couple of times, but because I haven't done it in a while, I actually did not remember how I did her skirt. So I figured that out off of live. Did that outside of the live, sort of the pressure of being live, finish that up. But what I will do today, and what I'll show you guys today, is me working on her vest and on her collar. Now, I'm just going to be working, and I'll kind of share with you guys, as I always do, what I'm doing on the screen, just in case you're interested in sort of the process of doing digital illustration, just in case, that sort of conversation piques your interest. I will let you know what I'm doing. But today I kind of want to talk about and touch on setting goals, right? Because we are at the end of January. And like many people, I myself have set a set of goals for this new year. And I know a lot of you guys have set goals for this new year. But sometimes we find ourselves sort of in not a pickle, but we start off strong, right? We start off with our goals extremely strong. And then somewhere along the way, we kind of fall off. And I notice this a lot because I go to the gym and I notice new faces in the gym every January. By the end of January, it kind of slows back down where the gym is empty again at a certain time and things are great. But what happens? What happens when we, set aside some time or like a goal, and we're super excited about something, and we decide later that maybe, I don't know, we procrastinate, we talk ourselves out of it, whatever the situation is. I want to talk about that a little bit. It's been on my mind. So I do have some tips. Now, one of my biggest goals for this year is to finish the illustrations for this deck. Now, there's a lot to do, but we have almost the full year to do it, right? There are over 40 cards, I think, left to illustrate. So a lot of this is going to start to move a lot faster very soon. But this is a project that I've been doing for 5 years, right? So the goal that I set out many years before the 5 years, before 5 years ago when I started this, I set out to finish a deck, and then I've committed myself to finishing it no matter what, right? Now it's taken me 5 years to do it. Whatever your goal is, it may not take you that long, right? It may not take you 5 years to complete whatever your goal is, but you have to kind of set aside time to work on that thing. All right. Sundays is my day to do it. Now, before we get too deep into this, I am going to flip on and off some of my layers, and the layers panel is going to be over to the right-hand side of the screen where my mouse cursor is, because I don't know where I left off. Okay, this is where we at. So I have some information here, and then I have the vest here. Okay, so I'm going to pick back up on this. All right, so how do we stay on track with our goals? How in the heck do I start or continue to work on a project that's taken me over 5 years to complete? What is the deal? How do you do it, right? All right, so when you're setting aside goals, one of the main things to first do is make a decision, right? What is it that you want to do? Whatever it is, that's the most important thing, because we can say, okay, well, I want to be rich, this, that, and the third. But of course, there are so many ways that we can accomplish a certain thing. So decide specifically what it is that you want to complete, right? Decide that now. Make a decision. I want to lose 20 pounds this year. I want to make an extra $1,000 a month, or whatever the goal is. Make sure that you're clear about what that is, because that's going to help you along in the long run. Because if you're not clear, you'll be twiddling your thumbs, not really knowing where to start. And sometimes we don't know where to start, but making a decision on what it is that you want to do is probably one of the most important things that you can do to start, accomplishing your goals, getting things done, right? Now, I'm going to go into this vest because this is a vest. What I'm going to do is exaggerate a little bit off of her waist where this is going. All right. So once you have your goal decided, right? I have a goal for myself to finish the illustrations for this deck by the end of the year. What we'll do from there is actually set aside time to complete that goal, right? Because life is going to life regardless to what you have going on, regardless to what you dream, regardless to whatever your aspirations are. There's never really going to be a perfect time to get started. So my philosophy is to start as soon as possible, but to actually dedicate time to whatever it is that you want to accomplish, right? So for me, again, Sundays is the day that I dedicate time to work on the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. Now, admittedly, I have not been maximizing my time in doing so, because I will get distracted or procrastinate or go on to the next thing after our live streams. But lately, I have been making a point to actually sit down for an hour or so after the streams to continue to work on this deck, because this is the time that I set aside for it. You have to do the same thing. If there's something that you want to learn, if there's something that you want to accomplish, you kind of have to make time to do that, because otherwise life is going to continue to life, right? Bills still have to be paid. You still have to eat. You still have to go to work. You still have to do all of the things that you've been doing up to that point. But if you make time to actually do the thing that you want to do, then you're making at least small steps toward accomplishing whatever it is that you want to accomplish, as life goes on. The other thing is something that I read recently, which is to do things as if you won't fail, right? I read that in a book called Hidden Powers by James K. Van Fleet. Hidden Powers was pretty much a book about programming your subconscious mind. And he has a philosophy of going into things as if you cannot fail, right? But I want to add to that, don't be afraid to fail faster. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. And it looks like our camera is frozen, but hopefully you guys, there it is. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. But act as if you cannot fail no matter what, right? So what does that look like? That looks like overcoming sort of your self-imposed limitations, right? Getting out there and trying things anyway, regardless to whether you are familiar with that thing, regardless to whether you are regardless to whether you know people who are doing that thing that you want to do. Act as if you cannot fail, right? And that helps in the long run, because if you're acting as if you cannot fail, and let's say you make a mistake and you fail anyway, no matter what, if in your mind you know that no matter what happens, I cannot fail, whatever mistake you make is only a stepping stone towards whatever the end goal is, right? You just have to find another way. You have to pivot and figure out another way to make it work. So you want to act as if, again, you cannot fail. And I think that's very, very important when you're setting goals, because sometimes we can kind of talk ourselves out of accomplishing something because, again, life gets to life, right? We start picking up those old habits. We start, going back into old programming and, talking to people who may not necessarily see the same vision in you that you see in yourself. And so again, it can be challenging, right? But if you are acting again as if you cannot fail, then no matter what, you'll stay on top of things. The other thing that you're going to have to master is discipline, right? Because that means that no matter what happens, no matter what goes on in life, I have this goal that I have to complete, and I have the time set aside to do it. So even if I don't feel like it, even if I only give 10% of my effort on that day, I am making steps towards completing that goal. So that is something else that you have to take into consideration. Now, what I am doing on the screen is I am pretty much drawing in the pattern of her vest. And it looks as though I'm pretty much trying to follow the curvature of her spine. So I'm trying to follow something a little bit like this, and I'm just sort of putting in the baseline of the information that I'll add a little razzle dazzle to here in just a moment. But I am putting in the basis of the pattern on her vest, and then we'll go from there. From there, I'm going to lower the size of my brush, and I'm going to put in the lines in between, because she has a few things going on in between the lines, and we're going to do that. And now that I'm thinking about it, I actually should have done this on a separate layer, but for the time being, we're just going to make it work like so. All right. So again, you have to make time for what you want to do. You have to act as if there's no failure in sight. Even if you make mistakes, you use those mistakes to, improve the process, to improve your resolve, and to practice being disciplined. So you want to do those things. The other thing that I like to do is to make to-do lists, right? So once you have a goal, for instance, I have this huge goal of finishing 40 something cards by the end of this year, hopefully sooner than that. My job then is to break that up into tasks, right? So if I'm breaking down the process of creating these cards, what does that look like? So the first step for me is to decide which set of cards I'm going to plan first, because I plan cards in sets of fours, right? Right now we're working on the threes. After I've made the decision that, okay, I'm focusing my attention on these threes, I go and I plan those cards. So I research the cards, I do my thumbnails. That is step two. Once I make a decision, that's step one. Step two is to research. And then I guess step three would be to do the thumbnails. Once I've done the thumbnails, then my next step is to create the sketches, right? Once the sketches are done, then I hop on Sundays and we render them out together. That is the process that I take to create tarot cards. And so each day, or each sort of point in completing this goal, I sit down and I make a to-do list. I got a whole got a to-do list here. I put them on notebook note cards, and every day I do something towards a goal, right? So you kind of want to take the same thing, and that's going to help you to stay organized along the way. That is going to help you out in the long run, because you will be able to keep track of what movement you've made towards your goal, right? So, for instance, if your goal is to learn to sew, right? You want to learn how to sew. And the process is you have to decide what you want to sew. Do you want to sew clothes? Do you want to sew, I don't know, purses, or whatever the case is? Then, okay, we have to learn how to sew. So, the first step might be find your pattern, right? The next step might be to take your measurements. After that, maybe the next day you go fabric shopping. And from there, and so on and so forth, you learn different techniques for sewing, whether that is watching YouTube videos, whether it's trial and error, whatever the case is, you make an effort to take a step towards your goal. So to-do lists are my go-to for doing so. The other thing that you have to do is pivot, right? So when things are not working out the way that you want them to work out, and you guys have seen me pivot quite a bit on this channel, when we have sketch ideas that don't necessarily are not necessarily articulated the way that we want them to be. You guys have witnessed me pivot, and this card is a testament to that. Well, we'll change direction, but the goal is still the same, right? So, and that comes with failing faster. Now, see, my camera is frozen again. You want to fail faster. And the sooner you do that, the sooner that you can pivot and find a new way of accomplishing whatever it is that you want to do. But you do want to be brave enough to take chances and do, try different things to get those goals accomplished. Don't be afraid, right? You have to kind of believe in yourself. The last part of that is you have to show yourself grace. So, what does grace look like? Grace looks like, oh my goodness, I have designed this card or I had this idea in my mind and it's not necessarily working out the way that I wanted it to work out. And I know I explained on live that I want it to be this, but it's not looking the way that I want it to look. It's not feeling the way that I want it to look. Woe is me, right? And you start to beat yourself up and you start to sort of feel like a failure in that. But again, if we're approaching the situation like we can't fail regardless, give yourself grace, right? Mistakes happen, and mistakes can be used as a vehicle for learning how to do things better, learning how to do things differently, and maybe receiving inspiration from unexpected places, because there is no greater motivation for invention than necessity, right? So if you absolutely need to do something different, if you absolutely need to approach a situation in a different way, failing or making a mistake along the way is the quickest way for you to correct those things and the quickest way for you to get from point A to B. Just don't be afraid to fail, because in your mind, there is no failure, right? So those are my main things. Now, I do know that, again, sometimes we can have these super grandiose ideas and we can feel like, gung ho about it at first. And then that motivation wears off. But we cannot depend on motivation. That's tip number, I don't know, infinity at this point. We cannot depend on motivation. And that is so important, because motivation is one of those things that will hit you in spurts. Like right now, I'm hella motivated to get these cars done. So I'm taking extra time outside of the live streams to work on them. I'm working on them through the week. And I'm highly motivated to get this particular goal done. But at some point, motivation may likely wear off, right? And I'll sit here and I'll get stuck on something and I'll be like, I don't feel like working on this tarot deck right now. I don't feel like, doing the live stream. I don't feel like doing whatever the thing is. But your discipline says, but you have to do that because that is the step to accomplishing your goals, right? So no matter how I'm feeling, I have to get it done. That is the difference between being motivated and being disciplined. And discipline is something that, because things happen so fast and we watch people blow up really fast and all of those things, we watch a lot of instant successes happen. It is difficult sometimes to see the work that goes into place before that blow up happens, right? Before that blow up or that glow up happens. And so from our perspective, we're like, well, they just popped on the scene, but we don't see that they spent 15 to 20 years developing a skill, right? In order to get to that point. And more likely than not, they probably felt like they were going to give up or whatever the case is, but they stayed disciplined until they accomplish whatever their goal is. And you have to do the same thing. I have to do the same thing. I have a video, just in case you guys have not seen it yet, all about procrastination, because procrastination is one of the things that I do, right? Quite often. I will sit and procrastinate on something, whether it's something that I am feeling like it's not going to take me that long, so I don't have to put a whole lot of time and effort getting it done, because I know I can get it done quickly. Sometimes I procrastinate if I get stuck on something, like if I'm stuck on an idea, I'll just like get paralyzed, right? Not knowing exactly how I'm going to accomplish something. And sometimes I procrastinate because I'm afraid of whatever. So you have to sort of identify why you're procrastinating, and then from there attack it anyway. If it's a fear, which oftentimes is the case, if we're afraid to make the next step because maybe we hadn't seen it, maybe we're going through some imposter syndrome where we're feeling like, who are we to do a certain thing? You have to do it afraid, right? You have to do it afraid. You have to dare to go as far as you can go with whatever this thing is that you want to accomplish, because otherwise it's not going to get done. So let's say I'm again working on this tarot deck and have been doing so for the last it'll be 6 years in November. I've been working on this project for 5, 6 years. I'm watching other people put out tarot decks lightning times faster, right? So much faster than I, right? They have the resources, they have the time to do that. I can say, well, gosh, it's taking me so long. Maybe I'm not, on whatever wavelength these people are, but you can't compare yourself to those people and you have to show yourself grace. But you also can't be afraid to take as long as it's going to take. It's going to take as long as it's going to take, right? So you have to sort of move through those fears. When I first began to do these live streams, for example, I was absolutely afraid to get on and be seen making mistakes in person in real time. And now here we are. I think we've been doing live streams now for about 6 months, and you've seen me make all kinds of mistakes, you know, and it gets a whole heck of a lot easier to deal with. It gets a whole lot easier to navigate because you accept that mistakes are part of the process. So when you're setting goals, just know that there is no failure, right? Even if it doesn't go or end the way that you want it to end, even if things sort of play out differently from what you've expected them to or how you've expected them to play out, do it anyway, right? Do it scared, do it unprepared because there's never going to be a perfect time to do anything. Just do the thing, right? Make your to-do lists, make the decision on what it is that you want to do, and give yourself grace along the way. You don't know what you don't know. Allow yourself to learn as the process unfolds, and just keep going. All right. So now what I have done on this screen and what we're doing is sort of working on the vest. Now I'm looking at the vest in my strength character that is right below us in the reference panel, and it looks like she has some stripes. I'm kind of trying to keep it as close to this as possible, but not exact because she's older in this picture. Maybe in this story, her vest changed slightly. I don't know. As she gets older, because again, she is older here. She is maybe, I would say 10 to 12 here, and I would say she's a good teenager in the Three of Wands, right? So I give myself grace along the way. I'm not going to get it exact. I painted the strength card 5 years ago at this point. So we're just going to picking up where we can and making the best of of it where we can. And again, this isn't highly important because what's much more important in this particular picture is her making this discovery that there's something in the distance, right? So she's coming out of this barren forest. She's looking out in the distance at the sea of sand, and she sees this pyramid out in the distance. I still hadn't figured out if I'm going to go with the portal idea or not. And if you guys have not watched any of the development of this card, go back a couple of live streams and we talk a little bit about brainstorming this being a portal of some kind. I don't know. We'll get there. But I am just sort of doing the best I can to mimic it, but not necessarily going for perfection because, again, I did the last picture 5 years ago. So it is what it is. So what I'm going to do now, and for those who are interested, I am working just in a regular old hard round brush. Now, this brush that I'm painting with, and brush meaning what I'm able to sort of lay pixels down with. This is just a hard round brush that I got from the artist Eric Anthony. He has a Gumroad shop, and I have quite a few of his brushes that I really like. So this is just a regular old hard round brush. But what I'm going to do, because if I zoom in here, I am noticing that there is some texture in her vest, is I'm going to create a new layer, and I am going to add some of that texture to her vest just a bit, right? Not a whole lot. I'm going to do that with a airbrush, and you guys have not seen me use an airbrush much, but is what I created the texture in her skirt with. And so we're just going to continue that here in her vest so that it kind of looks like sparkles, but not quite. It's sort of what we're going for. So we're just going to add, and that might be too much, so I'm not really sure if I'm using the right one. So I'm going to try another one because I don't like how that looks. So we're going to try spray. What does spray look like? Spray is a little bit better. So we're just experimenting, right? And that's sort of what art is. That's what life is. No one really has all of the answers. No teacher has all of the answers. No religion has all of the answers. So the answers can be found in many different ways. And in digital art, such as life, there is always more than one way to accomplish a goal and more than one way to do a thing, right? So allow yourself the time and the grace to experiment and have fun. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So I'm going to lighten this up a bit. I'm actually going to pull a light orange color from my reference, and I'm just going to lay that in. Again, I'm just adding texture, and I can also take some of this away. So if it's taking too much away from her stripes, then I can take a eraser with a little bit of texture, and I'll show you that here. I'm going to take this kneaded eraser, and I'm just going to swipe in different areas, maybe where I don't want the splashes to look or the sparkles to look too strong, right? And that's how we do it. Very easy. Very, very, very easy. All right. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to work on her collar. This one is also going to be a very easy step because I use a gradient, right? So this is going to be one of those times where being a digital artist is great because I can already have a gradient set up for a gold tone, and we'll make it a little bit copperish here in a bit. But what I'm going to do is clean up the shape of her collar, and then I am going to select it, and then I'm going to play around with the gradient until I'm happy with it, and then we are going to change the tone of it because in our reference it's a little more copper, but I know that my default gradient is a gold, right? So I'm going to select this. I'm going to add a new layer on top of that, and I'll merge them here in a bit. I'm going to select my gradient tool, and if we are looking over to the right above the layers, so here, I hope you guys can see me circling. Here, I have a whole bunch of gradients, and it looks like I have a copper one already, so I don't even have to do much in the color. But pretty much all I'm going to do is hold shift, and I'm going to drag like so. But I actually think that I'm going to take into consideration how the light is hitting her body, right? So there seems to be a little bit of light here. So yeah, if I did something like this, it might work. Something like that. All right. And so I'm going to deselect. Actually, no, I'm not going to deselect that. I'm going to keep that selected. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of texture to it. I don't have to because there isn't really any texture in my reference. But I am going to add just a little bit and a little bit of reflected light from her hair because her hair is blue, and that's going to show up in this metal just a bit, just a little bit. Before I do that, let me add a let me add a layer just in case I don't really like how that looks. But I am going to pick up the blue, maybe even make it a bit lighter, and then I'm going to add some from the orange, right? And then I'm going to take a smudge brush and I'm going to smudge that out just a bit, just a little bit, right? And if I don't like it, I can go back with my kneaded eraser and erase that just a bit. Now, what I am noticing as I'm doing this is that my sketch is pretty dark, darker than I would like, and it's making it difficult for me to see how this will look. So I'm going to tone my sketch down just a little bit. I might even turn it off for right now. There we go. And then that'll allow me to see a little bit better how this is showing up on the screen. So I don't really like it, so I'm actually going to start over. I'm going to start over, and then I'm going to go back instead with a textured brush. I'm going to go back to my hard round brush, and I'm really just want to sweep this color in very, very lightly because it's only really picking up a little bit, right? Same with her vest. It's only going to pick up just a little bit of that tone and maybe a little bit of the atmosphere color like so. And then I'm going to take my smudge brush, and this time instead of smudgy, because I didn't like how smudgy was looking, I'm going to take a smudge brush called Blend Master Flash. Again, this is from the artist Eric Anthony because his brushes are awesome. And I am going to just smudge that out so that it's picking up ambient light. It's not just a hard gradient metal collar, but she is picking up a little bit of light from her hair. And I'm going to pick up this color again from the smudge, and I'm just going to drag it out just a bit like so. And that'll kind of help sell that this is a reflective surface. All right, and not too much on it. Again, this is not the most important aspect of this particular image, but we do want it to make sense. So that's very important. We want everything to sort of make sense. So I'm going to merge all those layers together because I don't need them separate anymore. And then what I am going to do is add a new layer. Go back to my hard round brush, and then I'm going to add a shadow, right? Because this sits on top of the vest, and we want to make sure that it's not just a flat, collar. It does have a little bit of dimension. So I rotated my canvas and in Clip Studio Paint, and I don't know that I mentioned it. So just in case you guys are interested, and those of you who are interested in digital art, I'm working in Clip Studio Paint. It is my program of choice. It's not a requirement for you to have Clip Studio Paint if you're into digital art. This is just what I like. I transitioned from painting in Photoshop, and I did paint very much like I am in Clip Studio Paint in Photoshop. That was sort of my program of choice. Really was one of the only programs that was really worthwhile and I could do a whole lot in over the years. Of course, things have changed and shifted, and we have a whole lot more options. But when it came time for me to pick something else because I didn't necessarily like the subscription model of Adobe. And I also my computer was so old that I couldn't like keep up with the version of Photoshop that I had. I actually moved over, was kind of sort of looking at some of my fellow illustrators, and a lot of them were using Clip Studio, and so that's where I sort of leaned into Clip Studio Paint, and I enjoy it. It was the easiest transition again from Photoshop into a new program. Now, of course, like anything, it has a learning curve. I know one of the most popular programs right now is Procreate on the iPad. One of the reasons I don't do much in Procreate, like I do a little bit of sketching, but I don't do a whole lot. It's because of the learning curve, right? So if you're going into digital art, or maybe you're in digital art and you're trying to sort of transition into something, make sure that it's something that you can learn. Now, again, I know Procreate is a super popular option. One of these days, I would really like to sit down and work in Procreate and just sort of lay down or do an illustration. But for right now, Procreate is one of those things that I don't feel like fooling with. Shadow. One of these days I will. One of these days I will for sure. But again, Clip Studio Paint was just what I gravitated towards, because a lot of the people that I consider to be my peers were using it, and so I was like, well, let me give it a try. It's pretty inexpensive to get into. It's not a very expensive program, especially comparing it to the price of Photoshop when you could just buy a single license. So it was a lot easier for me to just jump right into. All right, so we have finished, I think, our character. I might tweak it a little bit, like I might work on her skin tone a little bit more. But again, she's not necessarily she's important to the story, but she's not necessarily the most important thing. The most important thing is going to be her action, right? So we're reading this, and why also you don't see her face, because that's not important. What's important is that we read this as her emerging from this space into something new, and she's discovering something in her distance. So yes, she's important, but not quite as important as the entire scene as a whole. So we want to make sure that everything is balanced. So I think the next thing that I want to work on is going to be the staff that she's holding, and I'm going to see if I can find it. Hopefully, there it is. I'm just going to say hopefully I label it, and I did. All right, so I found my layer named wands, and again, the layers panel is over to the right. There's like a list here. Hope you guys can see my mouse moving around. I am going to work on that because she's holding it, right? So I might as well finish everything that's attached to her, and then I can move on from there. So what I'm going to do first, before I start adding details or start even thinking about details, is I'm going to clean up the base. Now, my initial idea was to have the staff that she's holding be very much related to the trees, or sort of the remnants of trees that are around her, right? So she's sort of, again, coming out of this very dead, I would say, or she's sort of at the edge or the cusp between wherever she's coming from and this new sort of desert area. So the trees that are near her aren't necessarily alive. They're not going to be lush because she's walking into a desert, right? So we still have to tell the story, even though this is a fictional story. We still want to make it. We still want to make it make sense, right? And that's important when you're creating anything like that. Anything that's not real, you want to make sure that it actually makes sense, because what will happen is your brain will pick up on the anomalies, right? Your brain will pick up on things that don't necessarily match, that don't necessarily go together, that don't make sense. So we want to make sure we do that. So I do want her staff to be, the idea is that maybe her staff is made of the same trees. And then I wanted these trees to have sort of that barren, almost burned, not quite alive look, right? So thinking of, and I'm thinking of the tower card. So the way that I explain the tower, if you guys have not seen that particular card, is that the tower is one of the cards that most people dread, right? It is a huge movement card. The tower is like stuff has hit the fan and everything's upside down. And people tend to dread this particular card. But the beauty of the tower is that it's forced movement, right? So it's similar to a story that I saw in the nature documentary, where they were like, there was some forest somewhere, I don't recall where, experiences these lightning storms regularly, right? And in these lightning storms, there are not home fires, goodness, there are forest fires. But what happens is All of the old trees and things like that are burned down, but what's left is extremely fertile ground, right? So I want to kind of play up that idea. And so when I'm thinking of these wands being sort of burned remnants, that's sort of where my mind is, because I think that's a really great way of thinking about the tower. Because yes, it's unpleasant, or it can be unpleasant. It can be a very unpleasant experience if you're having a tower experience where things are just like not adding up, things are not going well at all, and shit's hitting the fan. From that, beauty can come, right? From that, growth comes, from that, expansion comes, and from that, hopefully you've learned something, or you've shared something that you needed to shed, or gotten rid of something, or you let go of something that you have been needing to let go of, right, in order to make room for new things. And so that's sort of the idea that I have when it comes to these particular ones. And I'm going to go ahead and clean up the others while I'm at it, so that I don't have to do this later. But yeah, that is sort of the idea that I have in terms of how these should look. Now, what I probably should do is probably go and find references. If I don't already have references, I have to check my files. But what I should do is find references of trees that have experienced this, right? Because I imagine there are certain characteristics that they all share. And so that will help again add realism to this sort of stylized, realistic illustration, right? All right. So again, I'm just cleaning this up a bit. It doesn't have to be fancy, because all of this is going to be tightened up and completed at a certain point. So this might be a really short stream today. I hope that again the audio is coming along pretty well. No, we've had some people coming in and out. So if you're watching this live, or if you're watching the replay, I really, really appreciate you for being here. Again, this is probably my favorite day of the week, because I get to focus on and share with you all the process of making my dream project, right? So if you're in the goal setting mind state, right? Maybe you have never seen anyone actually set aside time to work on a goal. Use me as your example, because this bad boy is going to get complete if it takes me 10 years to do it, right? That is what I would like to see, because again, this is sort of a self-portrait, I would say. I always sort of liken this project to a self-portrait, because so much of myself is tied into it. Now, I don't know if that's going to get me in trouble later on when the reviews and all of that start to go out, but as long as I'm putting my best foot forward, as long as I'm creating something that I enjoy, then I feel like the rest will sort of click into place in due time. So if you're watching this live, if you're watching the replay, I really, really appreciate you for being here. And don't forget to leave a thumbs up, because that helps me out a whole lot. If there's something that you want to see me do, if there's a question that you have about the process of creating a tarot deck, if I'm able to answer, I don't mind answering, right? Because in this particular realm, one of the reasons that I decided to make a tarot deck in the first place is because I wasn't seeing myself represented in the marketplace, right? So I know in business, I always hear people say that if you are wanting to start a business, find a void. Tarot is something that I absolutely love, and not being able to find myself represented in that marketplace was like, okay, well, let me make it then, right? And that has been sort of a theme throughout my life over the years. This channel again is a testament to that, because when I was first started out with this channel, it was all time lapse paintings, right? Because I love to watch time lapses. But the thing was, I wasn't seeing the type of art. Again, just like the tarot decks, I wasn't really seeing what I wanted to see represented. And so I was like, well, you know what? I paint, right? I paint. I create art that I like. People are paying me to create art, because a lot of them were commissions, especially early on. A lot of the art that I was sharing were commissions that people were paying me to do for them. So I was like, you know what? Let me share what the kind of artwork that I like, right? And so if you are sort of in the realm of creating something that you've never seen created before, don't necessarily do it because you want unless this is what you want. Now, if you want the attention and all of that, that is perfectly okay, right? But the more important thing I feel is to do what you actually want to see. So if you're creating something new, if you're writing a book, right? Or if you're creating a tarot deck, if you're creating an oracle or anything like that, make sure it's something that you actually like. If you're starting a new business, make sure it's something that you're actually like. Now I know money is important and I love it as much as the next person, right? So I know a lot of times money is the deciding factor for doing certain things, right? But I feel like money's going to come regardless. So make it doing something that you actually enjoy doing if you can, right? Make an effort to do that because that's going to make all the difference in the world when things get a little bit difficult. And things do tend to get difficult from time to time. You want to make sure there's something that you're actually passionate about, and you want to make sure that you're creating the thing that you want to see, right? And from there, you'll find your tribe. From here, I found people who were also looking for cars where they felt represented. They also had a love for Afrofuturism and science fiction and all of those things that I also love, right? And so from it, build it and they shall come, right? Is that how it goes? So that's how I want you to approach doing your goals. Do it for yourself. Don't do it for the next person. Don't do it to prove a point to the next person. Do it because this is what you see and what you feel like you deserve, you can have, and just do it anyway. And don't matter if you're scared. If you're scared, do it because you're scared. In that same book, and this was something I had come to the conclusion of many years ago, right? The easiest way to get over a fear is just to do the thing you're afraid of doing, right? For me, I was terrified to be on camera. Absolutely terrified to be on camera. I'm talking into the void. Half the time, I don't know if I'm talking to myself. It don't even matter. I did it because I was afraid to do it. And so for me, it became a sport. It was like, okay, I'm scared to do this. Let me just do it anyway, right? Just to get past that. Now, in that book I was mentioning earlier, The Hidden Power by James K. Van Fleet, he has a long name. He mentions the same thing, right? He says, do the thing you're afraid to do so that you get the power to do it anyway, right? So you kind of give yourself the power, you give yourself a power up. If you just do the thing that you're afraid of doing, get that bad boy done just to get over the hump of being afraid. And that way you don't talk yourself out of doing something that will ultimately lead you to where you want to go. You got to do it anyway. It don't even matter. With me, I was making, the speed paintings and things like that. Some of that art is good. Some of it's not. And to me, it didn't matter because I loved doing it. I loved enjoying it. I loved sharing it, whether the video had 1,000 views or whether that bad boy had 20 views. It was something that I enjoyed doing, and it's something that I enjoyed watching. Right. So I did it because one, to get over the fear, but also because it was something that I personally enjoyed. And so if you're setting up goals, sort of do that, do the thing that you actually personally enjoy doing. All right. So what I've done is just sort of laid in some texture using my chalk brush. I am going to go back over. You know what? I don't know. Let me turn. I'm going to turn off my sketch and I'm going to turn off the selection here and we're going to see how that looks, right? I didn't even notice the sketch going off. Well, that's good. All right. So I turned off the sketch and I'm sort of seeing how this looks. I like the gnarliness of this. So I'm going to sort of play that up a little bit. This doesn't necessarily have to be super rendered. Again, this is a burnt log that she's sort of chopped down and made into her staff. Maybe she's tied something to it, so I might add some ornamentation to it. But what I will do is, now I have my texture in. I'm going to take a hard round brush. I'm going to, I think I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to zoom in, and then we are going to tighten this up just a little bit. Not a whole lot. Again, this is meant to look like she broke off one of these trees and she is using it as her walking stick. So I'm just going to tighten these lines up just a bit. And the way that I'm doing that is just to go over the outline of it, right? This is going to add, this is going to make it stand out just a bit against the orange, even though it will anyway because it's gray and it's a little bit lighter than the orange, I would say, in value. I'm just going to add here and there, just little touches like so. And we're going to go up and down this thing like this. And we might even do the same thing with a lighter color, right? But right now, I want it to feel like this is all intentional. Now, of course, what I was doing as I was sort of adding the texture was just sort of letting things happen the way that they wanted to. right? Allowing happy accidents to take place. Now, what I am noticing is that in her skin, as I'm sort of moving up the pole, her skin, like we tightened up the shape of our staff, we need to also do that with her arm. I'm going to see if I can find the layer here. We got skin details. So if I turn that off, sort of how that looks, we're going to go into our skin. I think this is the one we want. And then I'm just going to correct this a bit. And then we might, again, go back into some of this and smoothing it out some. But I'm going to make sure to do that on both layers because I do have my skin flat layer and my skin details layer separated. All right. And it also looks like in her vest here, we can, here we go, see a little bit more of her arm. All right. All right. Now back to our wands. Let's see. Make sure it's on the right layer. Boom, got it. Okay, good. All right. So we're just adding just a little bit of finishing touches, right? You don't have to have much. Again, this is set at night, so nothing's going to be ultra bright or anything like that. It needs to be a little bit lighter. But we are going to add just a few little lines. And this may or may not do much, right? Well, we'll see once we zoom out. But some small articulations to show that may have been a knot at some point. Striations. And we can also do this with our chalk brush. We can enhance some of this just a bit. All right. That way it kind of blends in. All right, now I can zoom out. Again, that probably didn't make a whole lot of difference. Yeah, it made a little bit. Okay. All right. All right, so let's now, I think what I'm going to do from here is maybe straighten out the top a bit because I don't like how it's knobby. I'm going to make it a little more like so, maybe a little more jagged. And from here, I'm going to kind of outline the shape like that. And then I'm going to repeat that on the base layer so that we do it like so. So this might represent sort of where the tree's been burned and like this. So yeah, these kinds of details. And it doesn't do much, but I think it does add a little something. And I may not like it. I don't know. We'll zoom out some more later and work that out. But what I will do is I'm going to backtrack a little bit and go into her skin. And we're going to clean up this bit here just a little bit. Now, I am a fan of texture, but I do want it to look intentional and not necessarily like I just threw down some lines and left it, right? So we want to make sure that things look the way we want it to look. All right. So I hope that you guys, have made some goals for the year. I hope maybe if you had some goals that you've made before the year began, I hope that you go ahead and get started on those because there's never going to be a perfect time. So like if you have a dream of doing, anything, if you have a dream of traveling, if you have a dream of maybe you want to do a tarot deck, there's never really going to be a perfect time to start because again, life is going to life regardless, right? Life is going to do its thing. There's always going to be something to do. There's always going to be something to take care of. And if you're a parent, even more so, right? There's always going to be children to take care of and household to take care of. So you sort of have to be very deliberate about making the time to do the thing. Don't just talk about it, right? Be about it. And the easiest thing that you can do is just get on this phone that you're watching this on after this live stream, of course. But get on your phone and start to research the steps to take it. Maybe you find a community of people who have already taken those steps or are thinking about doing something similar, or just people who are going after their goals in general. and connect with those folks, right? Learn from those people and don't be afraid to ask for help. So I know a lot of times as we get older as adults, our pride gets in the way and we feel like, well, I can't ask for assistance because whatever excuse you give yourself, ask for help. If you have a question, there are people out there who would love to help you get from point A to B. If that involves any graphic design or illustration, I would love to sit down and talk to you about your project, right? I would love to be helpful in that way if you want to learn graphic design and illustration. We're still going to work on those tutorials and things like that because I seem to have gotten quite a bit of positive feedback from the video that we did recently where the live stream wasn't necessarily working and I had to pivot. So I know that there is a group of people who are wanting to learn that particular skill set. So if there's something that I personally can do to help you, just let me know. If I can't, I can't. If I know someone who was better qualified to help you, I'm more than happy to point you in that direction. I'm looking again at my staff, and I don't think I like this here. So we're going to smudge this out a bit. There we go. Something like that. Just to sort of correct it, because I didn't like how that looked, right? So if you have a goal, if you want to come on here and talk to me about it, I know we've had a couple of we had one specific interview. We had one with Ms. Zajay Richardson, which was awesome. And if you have not had an opportunity to check that out, I highly, highly recommend it. Ms. Zajay was working on a Oracle deck. And so it's really, really interesting to hear her process and her thought process and see some of the images and things like that. If you have a project that you want to share, if it's just me and you, right? If there's something that you want to come on and talk to me about, or just sort of work with me, let me know. I would absolutely love to do that. All right, so we're going to call this live stream short. We're going to cut this bad boy off short. I'm probably, again, going to continue to work on this because this is the time that I set aside to do it, right? So I'm going to practice what I preach and actually do the thing that I'm advising you to do. So I have this time set aside to work on the Cosmic Gateways Tarot, and I'm gonna continue to do that. But if you're watching this live or if you're watching the replay, I really, really appreciate you for being here, and I hope you got something from it. I hope it didn't come off too like preachy or anything like that. The only reason I'm giving this to you is because I was struggling with the goal myself. And sometimes when I struggle with things, I like to analyze why it is that I'm struggling with it and then figure out a way or a plan to make sense and to make it happen, right? So if you have a goal, a few things, let's recap to do, make a decision on what that goal is. Set aside time specifically to accomplish that goal, even if it's just small steps, even if it's just time to research things on your phone, on your computer, or whatever the case is. Set aside time to do that. Break your goal up into smaller tasks, right? So for the tarot deck, when I plan cards, make a decision on what set of cards I'm planning. I do the research on those cards, find the themes, the keywords, and all of that. After that, the next step is to do the thumbnails based on what I've learned about those cards. From there, we do sketches, and then we get into rendering. Those are the steps that I take to plan out all of my cards. And after that, I write and do things for the guidebook. But break your goal up into individual, easy to accomplish, bite-sized steps. And that's important because sometimes when we have a huge goal or a huge thing that we want to accomplish, it's easy to get overwhelmed by the bigness of it, right? So if you can break it down into smaller things that you can accomplish, then you're accomplishing something, right? You're getting the job done and you're doing what you need to do. So do that. The last thing is to act as if there is no failure, even if you make mistakes and even if it is a failure, right? If you act as if there is that you cannot fail, there is no failure, then no matter what happens and no matter where the road takes you, you're going to win in the end, right? It's always going to be a win in the end. Just ride the wave. And finally, give yourself grace. So if you're not accomplishing things as fast as you think you should, as fast as you witness other people accomplish them, first of all, stop comparing yourself to other people. That's rule number one. But also just give yourself grace and then acknowledge the things that you have accomplished in this life, right? So, so important. All right. So that's the end of that. So thank you so much for watching. If there's something that you'd love to see, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Thank you so much if you're watching this live or the replay. replay. I really appreciate you for being here. If you are new here and you want to catch up, there are 6 months worth of live streams on this particular tarot deck project, and we talk about everything from what I'm doing on the screen to about the Cosmic Gateways Tarot, all of that thing, all of those things. Be sure to check those out. And until next time, I hope you all have a happy, wonderful, and prosperous week. Without further ado, peace.